Today we are continuing discussing the chapter 24, the renunciation of Kardama Muni. We will hear about his renunciation at the end of that chapter. Today we will discuss verses 16 till 30, the middle section of the chapter. And this middle section we will hear first the words of Lord Brahma praising the daughters of Kardama Muni and devotee, and he requests them to hand over the daughters to 9 sages. That handing over we will hear about today. And then Kardama Muni, then the Supreme Lord Kapila Muni will appear, and Kardama Muni will approach him in a secluded place and offer prayers. And that's from verses 24 till 34. So that is what we will discuss today. So we will start with reading text 16. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Vedam Adyam Purusham Avatirnam Svamayaya Bhutanam Sevadim Deham Bibranam Kapilan Mune. So, can someone read the translation, please?
Hare Krishna.
Yeah,
O Kardama, I know that the original Supreme Personality of Godhead has now appeared as an incarnation by His internal energy. He is the bestower of all desire by the living entities, and He has now assumed the body of Kapila Muni. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Srila Prabhupada explains the word Svamayaya. Svamayaya. We have heard that also in Bhagavad Gita, that where Krishna speaks about his appearance, Atma Maya, I'm appearing by my internal potency. And here we have the same meaning. The word Svamayaya, Srila Prabhupada writes, by his own internal potency. It indicates that whenever the Supreme Personality of God descends, it comes in his own energy, in his own eternal potency. So, he may assume the body of a human, but it's not a human. But that body is also not material. And then Srila Prabhupada in the purport speaks about the word Sevadim. And Sevadim means the original bestower of all necessities upon the living entities. He is the maintainer of all living entities. So he is also supreme, but it is the supreme individual. Shetasya Shetananam Nitya Nityananam. Srila Prabhupada quotes that many times. These are the words of Brahma to Kardama Muni. He says, I know the Lord has now appeared as an incarnation by his eternal energy. Text 17. Jnana Vijnana Yogena Karmanam Udaram Yataha Hiranyakesha Patmaksa Padmamudra Padambuja. Someone read the translation, please. 17.
By mystic yoga and the practical application of knowledge from the scriptures, Kapila Muni, who is characterized by his golden hair, his eyes just like lotus petals and his lotus feet, which bear the marks of lotus flowers, will uproot the deep-rooted desire for work in this material world.
So that's a description of Kapila Muni. Golden hair, eyes just like lotus petals, and his lotus feet bearing the marks, the divine marks, lotus flowers. But then which will uproot the deep-rooted desire for work in this material world. So that's the effect of this Sankhya Yoga. It will help us to give up this desire to exploit this material world. Srila Prabhupada explains one can get out of material entanglement when one has perfect knowledge or devotional service. So that's an interesting point. When we came to Krishna consciousness, and you were informed, you are not his body, you are eternal, you are the consciousness within the body. So how has that knowledge changed us? So when we get to know this, then from this knowledge we understand, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, the eternal is valuable and the temporary is not. So what has real value is the eternal. And that eternal we can, that eternal aspect we can realize through realized knowledge, Vijnana. And that can be realized by devotional service, acting as an eternal spirit soul, not as the body. And then acting in devotional service means in his perfection acting out of love for Krishna without any motive. That one does not want anything in return. And that devotional service, which is the para-bhakti, the pure bhakti, that will uproot the deep-rooted desire for fruitive activities. And that is what this knowledge of devotional service will bring about. And we will hear about that in the next chapter, chapter 25. It's called devotional service. And there the practice of devotional service is explained. And the first aspect we will hear in the next chapter is attachment to sadhus. Hearing from sadhus about Krishna. And that is the sublime method of realizing this knowledge. So Sankhya philosophy is explained by Kapila Dev for this purpose, to change our desire, to give up this desire for fruitive activities, change it into the desire to serve Krishna with pure love. So Jnana, what is Jnana? Jnana means receiving knowledge from the scriptures through the spiritual master by disciplic succession. So real knowledge which is free from the 4 defects we had, we get to the scriptures. So one must get perfect knowledge from this disciplic succession. That not just putting forward some theories on his own, that is cheating. So Kapila Muni's system is based on Jnana and Vijnana. So the Jnana we get from the scriptures. The Vijnana, the realization, comes to the practice of devotional service. Then the Dami Buddhi Yogam Tam. Krishna gives you these realizations to the heart. Tesham evanakampatam amajnana chamtama nasa chamatma bhavastu jnana dipana pashvata. With the lamp of knowledge enters our heart and burns away the ignorance. And then we get realization. So realization we get to the heart, this Vijnana, Tenne Brahma Hridaya Kavye. Brahma got it to the heart. That Tenne Brahma Hridaya, to the heart. That from Krishna. And we, if we practice devotional service, will also come to that point of getting this Vijnana. This Vijnana comes it comes when we enter anartha-nivritti, the purification of the heart. The more the heart becomes purified, the more we get this Vijnana. So then we get really rid of this avidya. And the avidya, Brahma speaks about that in verse 18. There it is. Esamanavite garbam pravishta kaitabardanaha avidya samsaya gantim chitvagam vicharishyati. Someone can read the translation, please.
We can read Maharaj.
Thank you.
Lord Brahma then told Devahuti, my dear daughter of Manu, the same supreme personality of Godhead who killed the demon Kaitava is now within your womb. He will cut off the knots of your ignorance and doubt. Then he will travel all over the world.
Perfect, thank you. So, yes, he will cut off all the knots of ignorance and doubts. If ignorance are vidya, what is this avidya? This avidya is a forgetfulness of our identity. Yes. Srila Prabhupada writes the knot of doubtfulness, which is this avidya, is tied, this knot, when the soul identifies with the material world. That's the mistake we make. That knot is called ahankar, the junction between matter and spirit. Ahankar, the junction between matter and spirit. So that is what we keeps us in this world, is ahankar. And before, because we will see a little further in the next chapter, there we have Kapila Muni start to instruct Mother Devotee, but Devotee is asking before, please help me to get rid of this ahankar, because this is my problem. This is my attachment to this world, which makes me identify with this body. So that's really a problem. This junction between matter and spirit is called ahankar. And samsaya, doubts. Doubts come from speculation of the mind. That Srila Prabhupada writes, doubtful knowledge is speculative, and pseudo-yogic knowledge, it's all doubtful. So real knowledge we find in Bhagavad Gita. Just man mana bhava mad bhakto machi mam namaskar. Just think of me, worship me, and become my devotee. That is real knowledge. Very simple, for the simple. Text 19. Ayam siddha ganadisa sankhya-charya susammataha loke kapila ityakayam kanta tekirti vardhanaha. Can someone read the translation? 19.
Your son will be the head of all perfected souls. He will be approved by the acharyas, expert in disseminating real knowledge. And among the people, he will be celebrated by the name Kapila. As the son of Devati, he will increase your fame. Hare Krishna.
Good, Bhaktinanita. Can you also read the purport?
Yes, Prabhu. Sankhya philosophy is the philosophical system enunciated by Kapila, the son of Devati. The other Kapila, who is not the son of Devati, is an imitation. This is the statement of Brahma. Because we belong to Brahma's disciple succession, we should accept his statement that the real Kapila is the son of Devati, and that the real Sankhya philosophy is the system of philosophy which he introduced and which will be accepted by the acharyas, the directors of spiritual discipline. The word susamanata means accepted by persons who are counted upon to give their good opinion. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. So Sankhya philosophy comes from Kapila. Of course, therefore, Srila Prabhupada many times refers to Devahuti Kapila. That's the right Kapila. There's a cheater Kapila who speaks impersonal philosophy, which comes much later. I remember I've studied both before. The devotee Kapila, the real Kapila Sankhya, and the other Sankhya. And it looks quite similar, but in the atheistic Sankhya philosophy, the origin of everything is not clearly explained. It's not explained how the conditioned soul became conditioned. that of this, what the reason for this is. That because the atheistic Sankhya philosophy is not related to Krishna and to the Supreme Lord, so they start somewhere in the middle, at Brahman. But we know from the Bhagavatam that Mahavishnu Goswami, Mahavishnu, Karnadakasha Vishnu, he first put in Brahman by his glance the unmanifested modes of nature, and then he injected time, the living entities, that and by injecting by his glance the living entities, the equanimity of the three modes breaks, and then false ego is created, which combines with the three modes. So that's where the atheistic Sankhya starts. They don't know where the living entities are coming from and where Brahman is coming from. It's somewhere, incomplete. So many questions they cannot answer. So that's not real Sankhya philosophy. So Sankhya philosophy comes from the Supreme Lord and is brought here by Kapila Muni. So that was were the words of Brahma to Kardama Muni. And now we go back to Maitreya Muni speaking to Vidura. Text 20. Maitreya vacha tvas avasya jagat shasta kumarai sahanagada hamsena cha chenena tridama paranam jaya. Can someone read the translation, please?
Sri Maitreya said, afterwards speaking to Kardama Muni and his wife Devahuti, Lord Brahma, the creator of the universe, who is also known as Hamsa, went back to the highest of the three planetary systems on his swan carrier with the four Kumaras and Narada.
Yeah. So he came with, he went back, Brahma, that with the four Kumaras and Narada who came with him, that and here is Brahma is addressed as Hamsa, or is known as Hamsa. Hamsa means one who can grasp the essence of everything, Srila Prabhupada says. One who gets from a mixture of milk and water only the milk, the essence. We know also the six Goswamis. Nana Shastra Vicharana Kanipano Sadharma Samstapakam. Anyway, the six Goswamis, they have collected the essence of all the scriptures for us. Essence is bhakti, and presented it to us for our benefit. Hitakarino, for our benefit. So they were also Hamsas in that sense. And in the Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada speaks about Naistiki Brahmacharis. Naistiki Brahmacharis, one who never wastes his semen at any time. that are great sages. That text 21. So now we will hear how Kardama Muni will start to execute the order of Brahma. Kate sata trita ksata Kardamastena jyotita Yatoditam svadu tritri Prada Vishvachicham Tataha. Someone read the translation, please.
O Vidura, after the departure of Brahma, Kadama Muni, having been ordered by Brahma, handed over his 9 daughters as instructed to the 9 great sages who created the population of the world.
Yes, and now we will hear their names. Maritsaye Kalampada Anasuyam Atatraye Shadam Mankirase Yachat Pulastyaya Avirpuvam Pallaya Gatim Yuktam Katavesa Kriyam Satim Kyatim Sabrihave Yachat Vashishyap Tatyapya Arundatim. Kardama Muni handed over his daughter Kala to Maritsi and another daughter Anasuya to Atri. He delivered Shraddha to Angira and Avirbo to Pulastya. He delivered Kati to Pulaha, the chaste Kriya to Kratu, Kyati to Brihu, and Arunati to Vashishta. And then we have the next verse. Atarvane tadatshantim chaya jahya vitanshate Piprashaban kitovahan sadaran samalayayat. He delivered Shanti to Atharva, and because of Shanti, sacrificial ceremonies are well performed. Thus he got the foremost Brahmins married, and he maintained them along with their wives. And then 25. Tatarisaya ksata kritadharani mantramatam patishtam nandim apana samsam asrama mandalam. Thus married, the sages took leave of Kardama and departed full of joy, each for his own hermitage. Okay, so that's all arranged with the daughters, and now Kardama Muni's attention goes to Lord Kapiladev. Sasavatirnam triyuham Achnaya vibhu harshabam vivikta upasangamya pranamya samabhashate. Can someone read the translation, please? 26.
When Kardama Muni understood that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the chief of all the demigods, Vishnu, had descended, Kardama approached him in a secluded place, offered obeisances, and spoke as follows. Hare Krishna.
Yes. So, Vishnu is called Triyuga here. He appears in 3 yugas. He appears in Satya, Treta, and Dvapara Yuga. Of course, we know in Kali Yuga, his Chala avatar. He appears hidden, concealed as a devotee. And that devotee is Lord Chaitanya. that. So can someone read the purport, please, of this verse?
I'll read Maharaj.
Please do.
Lord Vishnu is called Triyuga. He appears in three yugas, Satya, Treta and Dwapara. But in Kali Yuga, he does not appear. The prayers of Prahlad Maharaj, however, we understand that he appears garbed as a devotee in Kali Yuga. Lord Chaitanya is that devotee. Krishna appeared in the form of a devotee, but although he never disclosed himself, Rupa Goswami could understand his identity, for the Lord cannot hide himself from a pure devotee. Rupa Goswami detected him when he offered his first obeisances to Lord Chaitanya. He knew that Lord Chaitanya was Krishna himself, and therefore offered his obeisance with the following words: I offer my respects to Krishna, who has now appeared as Lord Chaitanya. This is also confirmed in the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj. In Kali Yuga, he does not directly appear, but he appears as a devotee. Vishnu therefore is known as Triyuga. Another explanation of Triyuga is that he has three pairs of divine attributes, namely power and affluence, piety and renown, and knowledge and dispassion. According to Sri Goswami, his three pairs of opulences are complete riches and complete strength, complete fame and complete beauty, and complete wisdom and complete renunciation. There are different interpretations of Triyuga, but it is accepted by all learned scholars that Triyuga means Vishnu. When Kardama Muni understood that his son Kapila was Vishnu himself, he wanted to offer his obeisances. Therefore, when Kapila was alone, he offered his respects and expressed his mind as follows. Thank you.
He will address Kapila Muni. But in the purport here, Srila Prabhupada speaks about Lord Chaitanya, that Vishnu is Triyuga, but in Kali Yuga he appears as Lord Chaitanya, and that's confirmed in the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj. Srila Prabhupada writes. And that is the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj, in which he addresses Lord Nrsimhadev. So he's pacifying Lord Nrsimhadev by prayers. Lord Nrsimhadev was very, very angry. Nobody could pacify him, and Lord Brahma pushed forward Prahlad, and Prahlad offered his beautiful prayers. And in these prayers, Prahlad Maharaj speaks about Lord Chaitanya. And that's the first reference in the Bhagavatam where Lord Chaitanya is predicted. And there's a second reference in which, in the 11th canto, where Lord Chaitanya is predicted. So, and that's mentioned in the purport of this verse of the 7th canto. So I'm reading 7, 9, 38 of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Itam nritiryak rishidevaya savatarer lokam vibhavayasyam sijarat pratipam dharmam mahapusha pasiyuganuvrittam channa kalaya dabhavastri yugo tatsatvam. So channa kala, hidden in Kali Yuga. In this way, my Lord, you appear in various incarnations as a human being, as an animal, a saint, a demigod, a fish, or a tortoise, thus maintaining the entire creation in different planetary systems and killing the demoniac principles. According to the age of my Lord, you protect the principles of religion. In the age of Kali, however, you do not assert yourself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And therefore you come as Tri Yuga, O the Lord, who appears in Tri Yuga. So he said, you are not asserting yourself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I read also the purport. As the Lord appeared just to maintain Lord Brahma from the attack of Madhu and Kaitava, he also appeared to protect the great devotee Prahlad Maharaj. Similarly, Lord Chaitanya appeared in order to protect the fallen souls of Kali Yuga. There are 4 yugas or millenniums: Satya, Treta, Dvapara and Kali. In all the yugas but Kali Yuga, the Lord appeared in various incarnations and asserts himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He asserts himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but although Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who appeared in Kali Yuga, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he never asserted himself as such. On the contrary, whenever Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was addressed as being as good as Krishna, he blocked his ears with his hands, denying his identity with Krishna, because he was playing the part of a devotee. Lord Chaitanya knew that in Kali Yuga there would be many bogus incarnations pretending to be God, and therefore he avoided asserting himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is accepted as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, in many Vedic literature, especially in Srimad Bhagavatam. And that's the second verse that's mentioned here, where Lord Chaitanya is mentioned. 11.5.32. Krishna Varnam Tvisa Krishnam Sangopagastas Parshanam Sachner Sankirtana Prayer Yanti Isu Medasa. In Kali Yuga, intelligent men worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is always accompanied by his associates, such as Nityananda, Advaita, Gadadhar, and Srivas. The entire Krishna consciousness movement is based on the principles of the Sankirtan movement, inaugurated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Therefore, one who tries to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the medium of the Sankirtan movement knows everything perfectly. Is Sumeda, a person with substantial intelligence. Yes. So, Srila Prabhupada connected the purport with Lord Chaitanya because Lord Vishnu is called Tri Yuga, that so text 27. O papashyamananam nirayesver amangalai kalena boyasanu nam prasidanti ha devata. Kardama Muni said, "Oh, after a long time the demigods of this universe have become pleased with the suffering souls who are in material entanglement because of their own misdeeds." So the material world is mentioned here as a place of suffering. And it's due to the misdeeds of the inhabitants, the conditioned souls themselves. So if you perform material activities based on material desires in previous lives, which are misdeeds, then you get next life again a material body. So we have a material body. That's the proof that we have performed these misdeeds in previous lives. Nobody can say I'm a good person. No. Because what did you do in previous life to get this body? That means we are all to a certain extent nonsense. That's what we are. And that's Vijnana, if one realizes that. Someone asked Bojam Prabhu, he asked, are you self-realized? And Bojam Prabhu replied, yes, I'm self-realized. I realized I'm a complete fool. But that is self-realization. That's Vijnana. At least that's a good beginning of self-realization. That, yes. And not only we are suffering, also the demigods are suffering. If you read the Bhagavatam, you will see a lot of suffering of these demigods. The 7th canto with Hiranyakasipu and so on. That, yes, we will hear now Srila Prabhupada's words of the purport. Someone can read the purport, it's on the screen now, please.
This material world is a place for suffering, which is due to the misdeeds of inhabitants, the conditioned souls themselves. The sufferings are not extraneously imposed upon them. Rather, the conditioned souls create their own suffering by their own acts. In the forest, fire takes place automatically. It is not that someone has to go there and set a fire. Because of friction among various trees, fire occurs automatically. When there is too much heat from the forest fire of this material world, the demigods, including Brahma himself, being harassed, approach the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and appeal to him to alleviate the condition. Then the Supreme Personality of Godhead descends. In other words, when the demigods become distressed by the sufferings of the conditioned souls, they approach the Lord to remedy the suffering, and the Personality of Godhead descends. When the Lord descends, all the demigods become enlightened. Therefore, Kardama said, after many, many years of human suffering, all the demigods are now satisfied because Kapila Deva, the incarnation of Godhead, has appeared.
So these are the wise words of appreciation by Kardama Muni of Lord Kapila Dev. That so he's appreciating his appearance. That he says here, yes, you appeared to alleviate the condition of suffering of everyone. And that is why the Lord appears. He wants us back to the spiritual world. Stop playing with this attachment and this aversion in this world. It fuels our false ego, this attachment and aversion. That we are attached to so many things in this world and averse to so many. We have our friends, our enemies, and we think it's all important. But in previous life, you had also attachment and aversion to many people, but they are not there anymore. Are you still concerned about your attachment in previous lives? No, it's gone. So it's all futile. It's living for the senses and for the body. And Krishna explained, one who lives for the pleasure of the senses lives for nothing. So Lord Kapila Dev will take us out of that condition by explaining, don't live for the senses and for the mind and for the body. No, live to serve Krishna. Engage in devotional service and you will forget about all that. So, now text 28. Baujanma vipakvena samyak yoga samadhina drashtum yatante yataya sunyagare suryat padam. After many births, mature yogis by complete trance in yoga endeavor in secluded places to see the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. After many births, that Srila Prabhupada quotes many times. Baunam jnanamanante jnana jnanavama pavachate vastir sarvamiti sat samahatma sudurlabha. After many births, the jnani who has matured in transcendental knowledge, he surrenders unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So one has to perform yoga for a long time, many births, and then one becomes mature, performing yoga in a secluded place. And then finally they understand Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And if they are fortunate, they surrender unto Him. And that's the completion of yoga. So Krishna says all these steps, skip them, and just surrender unto me. And that surrender is where the Bhagavatam begins. Yes, text 29. Saiva Bhagavanatya Helanam Na Janaya Yana Yesu Gamyamam Yasvanam Pakshaposana. Not considering the negligence of ordinary householders like us, that very same Supreme Personality of Godhead appears in our homes, just to support His devotees. So the Lord agrees to appear in a devotee's house. The devotional service is so powerful. It surpasses all other methods of transcendental realization. So the Lord lives, it is said in the scriptures, where pure devotees always are chanting and glorifying Him. So we hear also from Bhagavad Gita that the Lord is known as Bhaktivaibhava. He's never described as we have never heard about Krishna as Jnani Vatsala or Yogi Vatsala. No, Bhakti Vatsala. The Bhaktivaibhava is very kind to his devotee. But it is described that a yogi can understand him as is, but what's the condition? Bhakti amama by abhijanti yavi asatmi tatvarganam vishate tatanantram. Bhakti amama abhijanti. Only by the pure devotional service can I be known as I am. Text 30, the last verse of today. Shviyam vakyam ritam kartum avatirno si mekrihe shikirsur bhagavan jnanam bhaktanam manavartanam. Kardama Muni said, "You, my dear Lord, you are always increasing the honor of your devotees. You have descended in my home just to fulfill your words and disseminate the process of real knowledge." So the Sankhya, which has been enunciated here by Lord Kapiladev, is meant to establish us firmly in devotional service. So Sankhya tells us that real knowledge and real liberation is to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and to engage in devotional service. So that was the last verse of the section of today. So the time is now 6:25. Let's resume again at 6:35. That we have 12 minutes pause now, and then we will have discussions on the section we just discussed. Thank you. Hare Krishna. So we can resume. Now I would like to initiate the discussion with a question. We have heard here in the purport Srila Prabhupada explains that this Sankhya philosophy is based on Jnana and Vijnana. But factually we will see this Sankhya philosophy is the philosophy of devotional service. And that will be clear when we hear the next chapter. The next chapter, 25, which is entitled The Glories of Devotional Service, which is a long chapter. Well, also 44 verses, but a lot of purports of Srila Prabhupada, because it's going very deep. But my question to you is, when you came in contact with Krishna consciousness, then how did your practice of devotional service lead you to give you realizations? What were your first realizations when you started to practice devotional service? That so someone willing to share, please? Mother Kanta, please speak.
Krishna, devotees and Maharaj. My first devotional service was quite difficult for me. It was not according to my nature. Just devotees asked me to do something and I did it. I was doing it for some time. So one of the first realizations, and actually the further realization, that devotional service is a purifying process. And it's, of course, it's still going on. While you are trying to serve and trying to do it selflessly, if you want it or not, all your drawbacks will come out, and you will have to face them. And actually, in this process, you have to face yourself, your true self. I mean, not the soul so far, but your conditioned self. All your character, all your bad sides, good sides. So it's purifying, and of course, it can be painful.
Linda, that's a great realization that one realizes that, oh, I need purification, there's a problem with me. That's good. Thank you for sharing that, Mother. Any other realizations? I'm sure you have many. Don't be shy, of course.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
I'm just looking at this book, and every time I get a book, I used to write the date and the month I get it. So it was like 5th September 1979, and Sriniketan Prabhu gave me that book, which is Teachings of Lord Kapila.
Yeah.
And so it's really, I mean, we come from a devout family, so we were practicing some sort of spirituality. But the first thing that dawned on me that our religion is monotheistic, so to speak, and that Krishna is the Supreme Lord.
Yeah.
And the first book I read was Path of Perfection, and then Perfect Question, Perfect Answers, and then Sense of Self-Realization, and then I got that one here in September 79. So I just felt like this is a very exciting path, and it's full of knowledge and full of clear understanding. And therefore, all the confusion, we could cut through all the confusion and all the different path that was, that was part of what Vedic culture, Sanatana Dharma was all about. That was basically, I didn't have much reflection about myself at all. I didn't have much reflection about what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go. But I felt this was a very exciting life because this was very precise, it's very scientific. And I was also given these science theology books. There was free science theology books that was written by Bhaktivaibhava Maharaj and Sadaputta Prabhu. So I felt, oh, this is very scientific. So it's the science, it's Krishna consciousness, this is what I would like to do. I didn't think about myself what I would become, but I would think, oh, this is what I'd like to teach or preach. So it was very proud and arrogant, so I was thinking like that. So this was my first sort of feeling, I wasn't thinking that I needed any rectification. Then, so Krishna had to bring me down a few steps or two in the course of my practice in the first few years to start to realize that I actually have to sort myself out and become, try to become a devotee rather than, pretend to know anything of this knowledge, because I was a bit of a bookworm, so that's why. So later on, some other realizations started coming, but that was my first initial thing.
And it's good you became attracted by the clear understanding. That's very good. Thank you, Advaita Krishna. That a great realization that you felt you had found the true path, right? That at least, and of course, reflection and deep realizations comes later. Thank you. Someone else, please, share.
Hare Krishna Maharaj and welcome.
Hare Krishna Japa.
So, my first exposure to Krishna consciousness was in like 1978, 80s, my father became a life member. It's gone. So after that, what happened is when I came to study in Canada, do a master's degree. I was passing during exam period, exams, like nighttime, late nights, taking breaks while studying. I was pulling books out of shelves, and then I ran into a book. I opened, and that book was Lifetime Preparation. Pulled out that book open up. I said, oh, this is Prabhupada. I didn't know, just looking at the title, didn't have any idea about it. So I read that book. And then I said, oh, very interesting. I looked for the second volume, found that, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. And then some of those I got through interlibrary loan. So just that, really, I had no idea about devotional service, about none of this. And in fact, even at that time, I was in Koreas, I had some devotional attitude, but it was towards devatas. I had no idea about Krishna, clear idea about it. I would do different vratas for different devatas. But when I've read Prabhupada's book, this Lilamrita, I actually started worshipping Krishna, and I actually stopped worshipping all the devatas. I took all the photos, put it in my drawer, and just had only Prabhupada, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Krishna. That was my start. This was like the application of what I read in the book. And another application that happened is I kind of realized that, all these devotees were preaching, sharing. So I started in my university, in my dorm, a little room, I started a Bhagavad Gita class when I had not even read a Bhagavad Gita. I used to read every day 2 pages. I didn't understand anything, nothing, no devotee association. So, except of course, Prabhupada Lilamrita was my association. So, Monday to Saturday, 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. Bhagavad Gita class. And when I did not even myself had read Bhagavad Gita. What I have read is Prabhupada the Lilamrita, association of Prabhupada, gave me this force to start this meeting, and we just read 2 pages, 2-3 pages of Bhagavad Gita. I'll say 2-3 words that I had known from Prabhupada Lilamrita, and I'll cook for them. We'll eat together, we offer together, eat together, and go. Everybody would go home, and I'll stay. So that was the start. The realization again was, you have to serve, you have to do, you have to spread this knowledge, and it just started by somebody ignorant like me starting Bhagavad Gita class. Somebody hasn't even read Bhagavad Gita. That's how it started. But all Prabhupada's mercy.
Yeah, that's. I remember when first the 1 volume edition came out from Lilamrita, then my Guru Maharaj was in Mayapur, and instead of the Bhagavatam class, he was reading from Lilamrita, and he said, yes, this is, because you have in the purport of this verse, Nastavesa Bhatteshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevya Bhagavata Uttamastri Bhakti Bhagavata Nasik. Srila Prabhupada speaks about the person Bhagavat and the book Bhagavat. And they said they are equal, so that's as good as reading from the Bhagavatam. And it seems you had great realizations from it. You became attracted to Krishna consciousness. That's very good. That
I say even today that my Bhagavatam is Prabhupada Lilamrita is my Bhagavatam.
Yeah.
That's the Bhagavatam. I have changed my life.
Thank you for sharing that. Hare Krishna. Someone else want to share?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Bless you, Prabhu. Yes.
Okay, so my first approach to bhakti was well, prior to that, I grew up in London as a teenager. Although I come from an Italian family, so at some point I went back to my family and worked in Italy for a few years. And I remember that while driving, I turned the radio on. And the Hare Krishna movement in Italy had a radio station at the time.
Right.
So I guess sound was the first contact between that started my interest in Krishna consciousness. So there was a lot of programs, there was a lot of classes, and it was very interesting because there was classes about cooking, classes about the Bhagavad Gita, etc., etc. So, but at that point, it was very unclear because some concepts did not make sense. But still, I kept like tuning in to that radio station and listening to what, at the time, thought these people had to say. I found it very interesting. So, at some point, I just went back to London for work. Some good job was given to me, so I went back, and I had this desire to go to the temple, and then suddenly one of my neighbors, an old friend, invited me to come to the temple. So I was going to ask him if he was going to take me, and he asked me. He said, "Please come." But at the time, when I went to the temple, I was, strangely enough, immediately convinced, because the person that was giving class at the time, who is still in ISKCON and part of the BBT, was giving class. And because of his personal approach, when I came out of the temple room, I was convinced that, yes, this is something I want to be part of. And later on, after a few years, I continued the practices and etc., etc. Two more personalities, disciples of Srila Prabhupada, augmented this kind of sense of like personal approach, that this is not a distant religion, something that, it's just theoretical. Because of their example, I was completely convinced, and after that, so two things kind of got me into Krishna consciousness. My interest in Bhakti was because of sound and personal approach. These two things. So I knew that I was in for the long run. I was convinced. Although at the time, ISKCON was recovering from, the initial problems that obviously came when Srila Prabhupada left. But still, I did not pay attention to it. I was convinced of the message, and I was convinced of the fact that here it's a movement that it's both personal and also had something to offer to the whole world, no matter where people come from. So at that point, I continued to come. And then of course, years later, I found my Guru Maharaj, I took initiation, etc., etc. But the two things that attracted me was the sound and the personal approach of the devotees.
Yeah. And this personal approach you spoke about, two devotees, when you were attracted by them, that it means those who have some vijnan, some realization, they are attracting others. And that's also, and that we will hear also in the next chapter, where Kapila Muni speaks that this attachment to the sadhus factually, that is the source of this realization. So that's very good. Thank you, Palasyam, for sharing that.
Hare Krishna.
Someone else wants to share realizations after coming in contact with Krishna consciousness?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Maharaj.
Yeah. Shruti,
Yeah, I'm Stuti Priya. Sorry, I forgot to change my name. So, it was during the Kartik month, and before I came into Krishna consciousness, actually in India, I'm from Gujarat, and in India, and especially in this area, we have that system of cleaning the house, deeply, all the ethics and everything. And one of my friends, while doing that in her house, she got some books. And she must have read them, and she just called me up that I've got such a wonderful book and I want to gift it to you.
And she gave that book to me, and the name of the book is Life Comes from Life.
Mhm.
And I was a science student, and when I read that book, I had a certain very you can say, I say, punchlines in my life, and still there was little unclarity of goal. But when I started reading those pages, I remember that one line came in that, and it was like, people say that you should try everything in your life. And that was the line that I used to say, that we should try everything in our life. And with that line, like, because I'm from a very religious and very pious family, both my in-laws and my mother's side. So like no non-veg and no intoxication, it was there. But like with my college mates and all, we used to go like out, and like it was like, the feeling in my mind, like, okay, we should try everything that way. But when I read that line, and I was like, who is this writer who can write this line? And next line, I wanted to see what he is giving after that. And it was, okay, you can try everything, but then you have to also try all the narkas. And I was like, my God. And in the same book, he had given such clarity of the goal of life, and that was, I was never introduced to Golok Dham. But when I read about that Dham, I was so much attracted towards that, and such clarity about everything. And whatever was coming in my mind, I was getting answers to those questions. So this was, she cleaned her house in Kartik. She gave me two books. One was this, Life Comes from Life, and the another one was Path of Self-Realization. So I was always very much interested in reading, and without reading, I could not sleep. It was like before my, when I was in school since then. But the books changed. That time it was different, and then it was different. And then in Surat we had some, mela kind of thing, fair, book fair, and I went there to find out similar books. I wanted something like that because it did not. It gave me an appetite. So I went there, I bought a Bible, I bought a Quran, I got so many books, but then I could not understand any of them. And I don't know, it was the time when, Krishna was calling, and just opposite to our house, it was in February that time. The Mela was in January, and then February, it was Shivratri time, I remember, and there was Radha Govind Maharaj's Katha going on, 3 days Katha. And I had no clue of that. And one of the females in my building, she just invited me, come here. I said, I never go for such things. You call me for some party, I'll come for that. I don't go for such things. But she was insisting so much. I said, okay, she's insisting so much, I'll go for some time. I went there, and the katha was about Yayati Maharaj. And as soon as I reached there, they gave a paper in my hand, and I saw people, paying obeisances, and just looking at them, I also did that. And I feel just that one obeisance to that pure devotee of Lord Krishna, and the follower of Srila Prabhupada changed my life. So the process, the clarity of the path, the goal of our life, and that cutting all our wrong notions in life. That was the thing for me that kept me in Krishna consciousness. Thank you.
Thank you. That's beautiful. That yeah. I remember also that when the first devotee that I met was Vishnu Goswami from Gujarat, who was living in London and then visited Belgium, and I went to a lecture and I heard from him, and I heard the third. He was giving a lecture straight from the teachings of Kapila Deva that we are now discussing, but it was chapter 31. He was discussing a verse of chapter 31, which you will discuss soon, the movement of the living entities. And there you have a description of the spirit soul in the womb of the mother suffering. And after hearing that lecture, I understood. I got direct realization. I'm in trouble. That was my realization. And then the day after, I started to chant Hare Krishna mantra. So that's just this, like Shruti Priya is saying. Yes, I offered obeisance to Radha Govinda Maharaj. That first contact, and that's life changing. That we will see also when in the next chapter, Devauti, she will also have a life changing experience by hearing from the Kapila Muni. And this, we can have the same life-changing experience if we hear with attention and faith. That someone else wants to say. And are there any other questions about this section? Things you found special, or doubts, or
But it's very interesting to note that after Brahma, after this conversation with Kardama Muni, and he asked him to give his daughters to different sages. Brahma, along with the four Kumaras, and Narad Muni left for his dham. So there was a mention somewhere about that him not attending the wedding of his granddaughters. So somebody was saying, well, how come? And there is an incident that happened in my life. I was in Bombay then. And myself, there's another devotee, Brahmachari. We were called by one of our, I was in Bhaktivaibhava Institute. So one of our members was called for his daughter's wedding. So we took some prasadam and handed that thing and came back. So that's why I said, well, you Brahmacharis should not go to a wedding. You're not supposed to go to a wedding. So I am okay. So I kept, I've been thinking a long time. Today I see the same thing, that the four Kumaras and Narada left because they were Brahmacharis. Naistika Brahmacharis, so they're not supposed to attend weddings. That's how I'm thinking.
Yeah, we can say. Of course, Srila Prabhupada many times writes, yes, he was a sannyasi, he's not supposed to do that, but it was his duty, it was to marry them. Otherwise, they would live in a sinful situation. Great. Thank you, Ajahn.
Yeah, thank you.
Maharaj, in our question book, questions, there's a question which says, describe potency of the Lord that allows him to appear in any way he desires. So I think in the purports and things, Prabhupada comments that, it's not that we should understand, because it describes that the Lord entered the particle of semen from Kardamani and then entered into the womb of Devhuti. But really, we should understand that that's Lord can appear anywhere at any time. So I was recalling some of the Damodar Lila, where one of the Shaktis of the Lord is Aparichinna, right? That he is everywhere at all times, anywhere, and he can appear in the desire. But I wasn't quite clear if this is the kind of answer that this question was asking for when it says, what is the potency of the Lord that allows him to appear in any way as he desires? I wanted to seek clarification.
So that potency is described in the purport of text 6.
Right.
That one of the most important points is that is not forced to take birth, and he can appear in any form he likes at any place, but he's not forced like an ordinary being, that he appears, and that we heard in the purport of 16 also. There is mentioned that 16, I think, it descends by Svamaya, by his own internal potency. It indicates whenever the Supreme Personality of Godhead descends, he comes in his own energy. He may assume the body of a human being, but that body is not material. In Bhagavad Gita, therefore, it clearly stated that only fools and rascals Buddhists consider the body of the Lord as a common human being. So these are the main aspects of the answer. Thus, is not forced to take birth. He appears out of his own sweet will. Second point, he can, by his Atma Maya, he can appear everywhere at any time he likes. And the third point is in text, is 16, that he appears by his internal potency, Svamaya, by his own energy, Yeah. So,
Thank you very much for clarifying.
Good, thank you. There are no further questions or sharing.
So, another thought, interesting thought, Maharaj, observation, is that Lord, Kardamamai says that, it's Kardamamai saying that that the Lord comes by visiting you. This is verse 17 text. 17 text. By mystic yoga and the practical application of knowledge from scripture, Kapila Muni, who is characterized by his golden hair, lotus-like petals, eyes of like lotus petals, and his feet which bear the mark of, will uproot the deep-rooted desire for worth in this material world. I actually always was thinking that Kapila Muni came from Gididhi or Sankhya, but I didn't realize the basis of all it. The purpose was to remove this desire of karma, of this fruited activities from our. Didn't know that until now.
Yeah, that's also the Jnanis come also to that conclusion. Jnani means discerning between matter and spirit. 1980, I'm not that, and what's left that I am, that's spirit. But then to realize this spirit, they must give up all, they must purify their heart and give up all these material desires. And otherwise you cannot get liberation. And yeah, that's what Sankhya does. It gives up the deep-rooted desire for this material world. But this is the real Sankhya. The atheistic Sankhya brings you to the platform of liberation, to understanding and realizing that we are not the body. But that's halfway, because that's not sufficient. With just liberating yourself of all these material desires, you are not going to go back to the spiritual world. It's not possible. You must realize not only that you are not this body, but who am I? I'm a part and parcel of Krishna, and therefore I have a relationship with Krishna in devotional service. And by engaging in that devotional service, I develop love for Krishna, and then I can go back to the spiritual world. So that is what the addition of the devotee Putra Kapila he explains the signs of devotional service. And we will hear about that in the beginning of the 6th canto. There, because in the 5th canto, all the hellish planets at the end are described and how people are suffering. So there, and then Maharaj Pariksit feels compassion at the beginning of the 6th canto. He said, how can conditioned souls avoid going there, to this hell? And then Sukadeva Goswami said, then when they perform prayashita, they do atonement for their sins, they don't have to go there. And Maharaj Pariksit says to his spiritual master, that doesn't seem to work. It's like an elephant, Kunyat Saushavat, it takes a bath in the Ganga, comes out and he feels it's clean, but then with his trunk he takes dirt and sand and pulls it on the back of on his back, and he's dirty again. So that's not a solution, because this deep-rooted desire to work in this material world is not removed by this atonement. And then Sukadeva Goswami will say, yes, it's like the fog dissipates only when the sun comes up. So if one engages in unalloyed devotion, then it not only it purifies the heart from this deep-rooted desire to work in the material world, and uproots it completely. That is what Sankhya here will do. It will, because that's Krishna consciousness, is to change our desire. Changing our desire from exploiting this world to serving Krishna. But that must become natural. And when it's become natural, then you have attained liberation. Then it's over, the suffering. So that's why this Sankhya philosophy is the best philosophy, this philosophy of devotional service. Thank you for bringing that up.
Very nice.
This is
Thank you,
an essential point. Thank you. Okay, good. Then there are still questions. Keep them for tomorrow. We finished the chapter. Tomorrow we will hear about Kardama Muni approaching Lord Kapila, and we will hear something very astonishing tomorrow. Kardama Muni will ask the blessings to leave and take sannyas. That although he has now the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we will hear about that tomorrow. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Jai Prabhupada.
Thank you, Maharaj, and with